Hi there, trying out yet another set of technologies with this streaming stuff. Now have a proper mic set up. As well as that, we are using some background music, partly to make sure I understand how the Windows audio mixer works. So we are playing some CC Mixter music, which is Creative Commons, free for commercial use with attribution. So without further ado, here is my desktop with the required attribution via a Chrome tab. So right now we're going to chat about a couple of upcoming potential projects and do a little teardown. So the upcoming projects, as per the title, what do you do when you suddenly have 100 spare speakers? What do I mean by 100 spare speakers? Well, I mean, if I get my handy dandy camera ready, that I have finally catalogued, or at least sorted, the donation from a local equipment manufacturer, and that is 100 speaker boxes, metal frame with one speaker, which could be 50 stereo pairs, and behind those is a bunch of front panels which we can use to get volume controls, a VU mixer, and switches and a few other bits and pieces. And what will we do with those? So I was thinking about that, and thought, well, I have a box somewhere of these, which are some small audio amplifier EVMs or evaluation modules, which I was given quite a few years ago, but they still work really well. They were a chip from Texas Instruments, the TPA 2012 D2, which was used in cell phones. And I've used it before to put together a couple of little speakers, plus a power supply, and voila, a really simple beginning project for how to solder. But I only have 10 of these modules, and I thought, what will I do? And I let my fingers do the walking and started thinking about what we might be able to get hold of easily. And Amazon to the rescue, although there's also AliExpress and a bunch of other places, but this is easy for me to get here in Canada because this is prime shippable. And what it is a pack of, well, I'm not sure if it's 5 or 10. The picture says 5, the description said 10. Mini digital power amplifier, 3 watts, class D. That means it's a digital amplifier. A lot of audio experts or audiophiles will argue that this is not the best kind of audio amplification, but given that these speakers are for CB radios, I believe, this should be more than good enough. So for about $2 of components and some wood and some screws, I think we could do a really fun intro to soldering project, which would be get a 3.5mm jack and make it so that we solder them to the speakers, power supply. These things take 5 volts, so that should work from a standard USB power pack. Lots of people have spare phone bricks, but a lot of phone bricks might not have enough power, so we might have to add a little bit extra to get a decent USB power supply. But the grand total would be about $10 to $15 is my guess to do an intro to soldering project, which would let you walk home with a set of custom small USB powered external speakers. But then I thought, that's a great starting point, but where could we take this? And a chip that's been very popular in the hobbyist industry, the hobbyist scene for the last year or so is the Espressif ESP32. That's a pretty amazing little chip. It includes low power, it's got 2 cores, it's got Wi-Fi and Bluetooth built in, Bluetooth LE, classic Bluetooth. It has a whole bunch of features, very powerful and not too expensive. So I went to look at one of our DigiKey, an electronic supplier, and they had a really interesting product from Espressif called the Lyra. And it is available in, where's availability? 125 in stock in Canada, or at least shippable to Canada, and they're $30 each. This is a pretty amazing little chip, because what people have done with that is both Bluetooth speakers, but also Wi-Fi powered speakers or internet radio station built in. But they've also released an SDK that lets you actually create your own voice assistants, like an Alexa or a Google speakers, and you can build it all from scratch. Now the catch is that this is their own development environment, which I don't have any experience with yet, and from what I've read quickly, it's a little bit hard to get started in. Definitely not as easy to use as Arduino. But this would be really cool because it has a speaker amplifier built in, it's got microphones built in, it's got touch keys built in, and they're only $30, including tax, easily accessible here in Courtenay. So that would put the total project cost using these speakers at around $50. That's pretty cool. But it would be a lot harder for beginners to get into for all the software development sides of it, because they don't have a ready-to-go package. They've got some examples. You would have to do quite a bit of work. And then I remembered my favorite development board, super useful, the Raspberry Pi. And it turns out the Raspberry Pi 3 Model B, which is the fastest one they have at the moment, has both 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, but also Bluetooth, which can not only send but also receive. And these are available, and you can see just a little bit of interest in these. 2,000 of the Pi Bs, B pluses actually, and nearly 8,000 of the Pi 3s available to ship in Canada. They are more expensive though, but you can plug in a USB keyboard, USB mouse, plug it into an HDMI TV or monitor, and you've got a real little Linux computer. So not only could you do Bluetooth speakers, Wi-Fi powered speakers, your own version of an Alexa or a Google Voice Assistant, or Mycroft, which is an open source voice assistant project. But if you don't like the speakers, you could unplug this and use it as a retro arcade system. So I'm thinking that that project, of starting with the speakers and adding them as a Bluetooth set of external speakers, and then going from there, might be a good multi-week class for kids and keen adults. So let me know what you think. I think that could be a really good project that would take a few weeks to go. I'm thinking that it would cost close to $100 just for the components, and then tuition would be on top of that. But as an example of the Raspberry Pi, might be better to actually get a starter kit from BC Robotics, for example, just down the road in Nanaimo, because that includes the power supply, the SD card, and all the other bits and pieces, rather than sourcing them separately. But the downside would be we would also have to add a separate circuit board to be the amplifier. But again, the ones that I first started this idea off with from Amazon would work just as well. This is an example chip from BC Robotics. $14 per chip, but I mean, it is from Adafruit, which makes really, really nice components. But to keep it inexpensive, these could be a winner. So if you're at all interested and you live in the Courtenay region in an electronics introduction to soldering, get in touch. either through Twitch, YouTube, or email me at info@makeit.zone. Let me know, and we could get that going, because otherwise I have to find storage for all these speaker boxes, and that is going to get me into trouble. Well, enough about possible projects. I thought I'd show you one other neat little thing that I discovered the other day when something broke. And when it broke, I decided enough's enough. This is the third or fourth one of these so-called super reliable devices that has failed in the last few months. I think I might have bought a bad batch, but I'm not sure. But they're meant to be far more reliable than they've turned out for me, and that is the brand new LED light bulbs. So here is the bulb, and I have actually already tacked it with the hacksaw and plastic lid. As you can see, I've already started to disassemble it. I thought I'd show you what's inside one of these. So what we have is part that plugs into the main socket, and these are the actual LEDs that produce light. Now this one failed, a little bit of a flicker, and I could hear a buzzing noise, and I have a suspicion as to what's failed. I'll show you in a second. But inside there is this big piece of metal which went over the top. The LEDs sat inside like that, and then there were two wires actually on the circuit board that you can just see where I broke it off about there. And these LEDs are actually not dead. It is definitely not the LEDs that are failing, but the actual circuitry. So I can show you that if I zoom in, turn it around. You can see that I've scraped away some of the paint that's on top of the circuit board to reveal the underlying traces. And being a little bit enthusiastic to see how it worked, I actually broke off the epoxy on the first LED, so that is now actually dead. But the other one is full of life. So all I have here is a little battery box with 4 AA batteries. They look pretty giant. We'll try and zoom that. These 6 volts is actually too much for a white LED. They normally take 3.7 from memory, but if you don't power them for too long, they shouldn't come to too much damage. So let's see if this actually is alive. Untangling wires. So the red one should connect to the middle. And get ready for a very bright flash, if I can get it in the right spot. So as you can see, these LEDs are far from dead. So what has died? Well, it's pretty clear it's part of that circuit in there. So I am going to switch to the other camera. I've done it again. I forgot to double click, so we'll quickly go over that again. Alright, so I was so proud of myself finally getting OBS sorted out. So, light bulb was like this. Broke it apart with the hacksaw. Inside there's a circuit board. On top of the circuit board sat some aluminium. The LED sat on there. This light bulb failed by making buzzing sounds and a little flicker, but no real light. So, question was it the actual LEDs that had died, or was it the driver? So, as I said before, I had to scrape away some of the paint on top of the circuit board so that I could actually see where the copper traces were. I actually broke the piece in the middle there, so that's no longer connected as far as I can tell with some quick investigation. And that's the one where I actually broke the epoxy all the way off, so I think the LED is truly dead now. But the other one, as you can see, works fine. So it's not the LEDs that are dying in these bulbs, but it's got to be something in this part of the circuit. So we're going to do a little bit more creative destruction. So I'm going to switch back to the other camera for a second. Okay, so this is the part which I think has got problems. I'm going to grab a pair of pliers. Not really pliers, but vice grips will do, and I'm going to try and yank this out. That was really easy. So let's have a look at this under some more magnification. Light out of the way, so it's not in the shot. Okay. So this is the actual driver board that's inside these bulbs. So they're taking 110 volts AC. The LEDs want 3.7 volts each. They're not going to be too happy if you throw 110 volts at them. You'll get a very bright light, and then the magic smoke will be let out and they won't work anymore. So let's have a look at this. So it's actually quite a complicated little circuit inside these LED light bulbs. And once again, I'm learning, I remember to click with only a few words. So there's the little circuit board that I've pulled out of the light bulb. And as you can see, it's quite complicated for a light bulb compared to an incandescent bulb, which is just a piece of wire inside a glass bulb. So what do we have on this thing? We have big capacitor, resistor, another capacitor, a little coil, and a little chip. And I'm going to see if I can make this big enough for me to see on my screen. So we could look up what that chip is, but basically what it is doing is it's going to be taking the input power from the mains at these two wires, which were plugged into the socket into the mains, and it's going to be converting it into a lower voltage, probably higher frequency. That's why there's a coil. When you see coils and capacitors, it usually means there's some kind of circuit which is, what we say, oscillating, going from one voltage to another. And what often happens with these circuits is they take voltage which is oscillating at 50 Hertz mains, but a high voltage, and transform that into a much lower voltage which is oscillating much faster, because your eyes will see the 50 Hertz as a flicker, but this will probably be making it pulse at several thousand times a second at a much lower voltage, so that you don't see the LEDs flickering. They're not on all the time. So my guess is what's happened is that I don't see any burn marks on that coil. No, don't see any smoke. My suspicion is either one of these solder joints has failed, but they all look pretty clean, or this capacitor here. This is an electrolytic capacitor, and a capacitor just stores a charge. It's like a very short-term battery. And these ones, these big round ones, actually have a chemical inside them, which is kind of like a paste, and it can dry out. And there have been problems around the world where capacitors had not a high quality electrolyte, and they've been drying out. So my guess is that it's probably this capacitor that has dried out, causing the light bulb to fail. But yeah, I thought you might be interested in that. It's not every day that you discover a light bulb has more circuitry in it than probably the first radios. Okay, and on that note, I think I will call it quits for tonight and let you go back to what you were doing before and enjoy your evening. And yeah, if you're interested and live in the Courtenay-Comox region and are interested in learning how to solder, and speaker project sounds like it'd be interesting to you, get in touch. either in the comments on YouTube, here on Twitch, or email me at info@makeit.zone. And I will see you again soon. Bye for now.